Hello, fellow PMI, Jambo, Salam, Akwaba. Welcome to my session on adapting the Agile Manifesto in social development projects. My name is Teiko, Sabah, and today I am joining you at the PMI Africa conference. I'm happy to be here. Imagine you're a project manager and you have a £22.5 million project in the social justice industry to execute. Your donors are very clear about the outcome of the project, which is to increase the sustainability of the social justice sector, ensuring that citizens have the information to be able to interact with states on issues of corruption, on issues of transparency and accountability. But the space between the start and the end is vague. What will you do? Imagine that this is happening in a volatile social environment where change is the only constant. What will you do? This, fellow PMI, was my situation when I started a project in Ghana. And I would love to share my experience with you about how we learned lessons from implementing this project and how those lessons, I believe, is replicable or are replicable to other African contexts that might be experiencing the same challenges of corruption, opacity in government's policies, lack of democracy and lack of empowerment of the local vulnerable people. Join me, ladies and gentlemen, as I take you through my journey in adapting the Agile Manifesto in social development programs, the case study of the 3C and L. This is how I'm going to roll it out. First, I will speak about the actual program itself, and then the concept of the 3Cs and L, the methodology, how we've rolled it out, some of the implementation strategies, the lessons that we learned, and then the most important part, how I believe these skills are replicable in other social justice programs in Africa specifically, or within a context that is similar to what we had in Ghana in 2015. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Teiko Sabah. I have about 20 years experience in project management. I'm a member of the PMI Ghana chapter, and I was head of programs for a 5-year DFID social justice project implemented in Ghana, which ended just last year. And the methodology I'm sharing with you was a methodology that we used on that program in Ghana. The program ended in 2020. We continue to use that methodology with the partners that we have worked with over the past 5 years. Now, what was this program about? This program was an advocacy and social justice program, and it was implemented, as I said, in a very unclear environment. And therefore, at that time, Ghana was going through the turbulence of being a democratic country. Civil society was rising up and finding its feet, and the issues of corruption and lack of transparency in policy and decision making was coming up. This project had the overall goal of a well-informed civil society able to contribute to transformational changes around key challenges of poverty, inequality, and inclusion for all citizens. So that was our overall goal. We had the money, we had the people. How do we achieve this objective? What were the pathways that we used to achieve this objective? Knowing that our pathways were flexible and could be adapted and adopted, the objectives were very clear, and this is what I'm sharing with you. Now, the 3 C's and L, the 3 C's, the first C is for convening, the second C is for catalyzing, the third C is coordinating, and the L, of course, is learning. What is this methodology and what does it mean? Just bear with me, give me a few minutes as I explain to you what this methodology is about. The 3 C's and L is a social intervention and participatory strategy that has been designed to support active citizenship. So it's a bottom-up approach, supports citizens to be active in decision-making concerning their own development. And this was done through the creation, the development, and the use of spaces. Spaces defined as platforms, areas for discussion, areas that ideas could be brought together and discussed, spaces that ensure direct communication between citizens as rights holders and the state as a duty bearer. So the project saw 2 stakeholders, very critical stakeholders, on different sides of the divide. How do we then bring them together so that they can have direct communication without any middlemen or women taking away some of the input of the discussion? The 3 C's and L was the tool that stood in the middle between citizens on one hand as rights holders and the state on the other hand as duty bearers. And we designed this as a space enabler, space very broadly defined as places for meetings to ensure that citizens could ask the right questions and that the state could also respond to the right questions that were asked. These are the 4 elementary concepts that make up the 3 C's and L. The first C, of course, is convene. And it's sought to convene inclusive dialogue and collaboration within civil society and other stakeholders. As already mentioned, the state is an important stakeholder, but Parliament, as the arm of government that is important for legislation, also needs to get closer to its people, and the private sector also on the other hand. Catalyze was also another key part of this strategy and methodology, that we are able to catalyze active citizenship and collective action. Citizenship that was already happening at the local level, actions that citizens were taking around transparency, around accountability, around quality service delivery within their communities could be upgraded and supported to grow and supported to be better so that they can get improved quality results from the work of their advocacy. And that is the second C. The third C was coordination. That was to support the strategic collaboration between and within civil society and the other stakeholders. And this is important because without collaboration, you are not able to get the numbers to get your advocacy going. These were the 3 C's that were key to the implementation of the 3 C's and L. And of course, the final one, and very important, was L, which is learning, facilitating a space for learning, for lessons learning, for action learning, for learning as we move along so that we can make it better. Now, what does this remind you of? Of course, the Agile Manifesto. The Agile Manifesto also learns. It has very short cycles for learning in the retrospects. And this is why I believe that the 3 C's and L is a similar framework to the Agile Manifesto. And therefore the topic of adapting the Agile Manifesto to social development projects. Now, this is a short diagram showing some of the pathways that we use to implement our 3 C's and L methodology. And I'll take you through it. So we start with an idea. The governing council of the program or the project monitoring team or a partner comes up with an idea, or there's something that is within the governments, within the environment, society that comes up as a social development issue. It could be very broad, anything from the Right to Information Bill having not been passed as at 2017 when we started this campaign, to gender equality and social justice. The issue comes up. The first thing we do is not just to jump into having a conversation, but to understand the context within which the issue is. And this understanding is a political understanding of the power dynamics of the context. So the tool of choice is the political economy analysis. And this analysis identifies the power, who has invisible power, who has power over, who has power from, and therefore, why are these issues continuing to exist in our society? We look at the duty bearers, we look at the entry points, we look at the beneficiaries, those who are benefiting from the current status quo. And this helps us to understand whether the actual problem that exists is the problem, or if there's an underlying problem that we should look at. Based on that, there's a discussion to understand this by developing a concept note that responds to the key questions that the political economy analysis has requested. This is then discussed and shared among the partners. So the project management office leads the work, a partner might also lead the work, or even a state institution that has recognized an issue might also lead the work. And then there's a series of planning and discussion to fine-tune what the issue is and to be able to understand. And therefore, when the discussion begins, we are on the right track to making it work. After that, after the internal discussions, we implement the initial dialogue, the initial convening session. And it could be at every level, depending on where the issue is. It could be at the community level, it could be at the national level, it could be at the intermediate level, it could be a strategic policy convening, anything that brings out the issues from the point of view of the stakeholders. This is an important part of the work. And then the actions that come out of the initial convening are followed up. And this can move into catalyzing or coordination or back to convening again. We implement it through our partners. It could be that based on the issues, there would be a 3-month rollout plan or a 4-month rollout plan or a 7-month rollout plan. Let's take the example of the Right to Information Bill. At that point, the Right to Information Bill had been in Ghana's parliament for more than 20 years. What we sought to do was to come up with an action plan that ensured that the Right to Information Bill was passed within the next year. And this was supported by journalists. This was supported by news editors who the Right to Information Bill was important for their own work. And thankfully, we're able to do this through the 3 C's and L. We learn lessons from how we have done the work, and we continue to ensure that our partners are better because of that, and they are able to do their work better. And so this is how we have done it in Ghana. What are some of the issues that we focused on? Some of the issues included what we call the magic moments. Magic moments are one-off strategic policy level events that are aimed at providing us with key entry points for citizens and duty bearers to interact. And therefore, any key issue that comes up, it could be elections. It could be the stoning of an old woman because she was supposed to be a witch. These are magic moments. What we do is that we use that as an entry point to have a conversation, a much more deeper conversation about peace in Ghana or about the role of women in the society. And this starts because that issue is there and there's emotion around it. Citizens are willing to look at those issues and have a discussion about it. Of course, the other issues that we focus on, as I said earlier, are locally salient issues. Issues that are very specific to specific geographic areas. So for example, in a border town, the issue of smuggling of free fertilizer that is supposed to have gone to farmers. That is an issue that is very specific to a very specific border town. By using that as an example, by convening around that issue, we are able to get the whole country to come together, have a discussion about the sustainability of our agricultural systems. Then the other set of issues that we looked at are the strategic policy influencing issues. These are high-level, sustained involvement meant to unblock constraints to the implementation of wider level developmental issues. For example, the passage of the gender bill, which has been in Parliament forever. These are things that are strategic, policy influencing, and when you break that or when you get that through, you are able to filter down to many other things working well. So the 3 C's and L, you would notice, can be used in a flexible manner. It can be used at the local level. It can be used at the national level. It can be used based on magic moments. And that is a tool that will help you to achieve what you want to achieve in a social justice program. Now, I want to share with you a few lessons that we learned as we implemented this, and really fast so that we can get into the meat of the problem, which is the replicability. First one is that the 3 C's and L was used as an entry point for multi-stakeholder conversations. The magic moments, as I said, was what we used to ensure that everybody is able to know what we are doing. Everybody has the opportunity to be included in the discussion. Second lesson, it connects the local to the national. You will notice that the 3rd C is important in terms of collaboration, ensuring that all stakeholders who are interested in a particular issue have come together around the table to discuss. And sometimes you notice that something is happening in community A, community B, community C, and that a state institution is taking care of something similar in a ministry in Accra. The 3 C's is able to, through discussion, bring all these little pockets of work together and connect them to a stronger and more national agenda. We are moving on to the next lesson. And this is something that we learned the hard way, that just having an event is not enough. And I think we all know that. Just having an event, having a discussion is not enough. It's just an entry point to getting into the space where the actual work has to be done. So convening is relatively easy to implement. It's an event management program. But then being purposeful in the following up, in the follow-ups, ensuring that things are happening as per the action plans, and ensuring that stakeholders are keeping to their word is an important part of achieving your overall objective. Also, depth rather than breadth. There are so many issues in a particular country that you could easily focus on, but you have to be able to define your priorities correctly so that you are focusing on things that can give you value. You are focusing on things that can give you leverage and that can scale up. And then, of course, we've already discussed that 3 C's and L are a collaborative effort. You cannot do it on your own. It's not a one-person work. It has to be generally shared. Now, this is the project, ladies and gentlemen. Now, how were we able to adapt it to the Agile Manifesto? After implementation of the project, as we reflected and as we learned, these are some of the things that came up that we thought that within the civil society space, we could look at the Agile Manifesto, which is much more in the software world, and see how we can also adapt it into the civil society space. We are looking at the declaration. Now, we are looking at the 4 components. These are the definitions of the components. And with your permission, I'll just go through them really briefly. Statement of interdependence. Each concept, full in its own space, but also has support and works towards achievement of the overall goal. Each concept can have aspects of other concepts embedded within the particular event. And there's an example given. Learning cuts across all the concepts. Core practices. We thought that after we have done all this for 4 years, what are some of the core practices that came out? This is a definition of what we believe is a core practice. These are content-specific practices that are fundamental to the full implementation of the strategy and supports holistic learning. And I'll take you through some of the core practices in the next slide. These consist of utilization of a specific skill set that promotes the creation of a supportive programmatic and advocacy environment to enable learning. So once again, we are focusing on the social justice space, and we are focusing on advocacy, citizens learning for their own well-being. Working principles are things that govern behavior, or they are rules that is adequate to permit work to be done. They are minimum standards, which if taken together, ensure that the ethos of the 3 C's are maintained, and thereby increase the possibility of achieving a sustainable change. Of course, in behavioral change communication, BCC, you are never approved that you get 100% of what you wanted. There will always be unexplained results, but at least if you focus on your working principles, yeah, sure, within a margin that you would achieve what you wanted to achieve. And then the assumptions are the risks that support the implementation of the various options and realities. Now we are getting to the replicability part. And I believe that other people who work in social justice spaces, social development spaces, these are the tools that you can use to also ensure that your projects are being successful. Core practices, the first one, of course, is the agility of your mindset, being able to be adaptable to things that are happening within your external context. The use of short action planning cycles, because politically things change. And as things change in your political environment, you also have to change within the confines of your scope of work. Using stories to tell change trajectories are very important, because these are the ones that bring up the emotions in the people that you want to support your work. And of course, one key principle of learning and sharing. One core practice of learning and sharing. Now, with the working principles, as you can see on my right, are a set of working principles. Be clear about the purpose, but flexible with the strategy, and always be able and willing to change your strategy as it changes with you. Understanding the context is very important. Think and work politically. This is not a linear process. It is a political inclusion to make change possible in the interest of citizens. And therefore, your analysis should also take the same way. Trust the process. Work with stakeholders, I've spoken about it. Trust the change process and keep asking the question, what's next? Be patient about results. Put gender equality and social inclusion at the heart of all your work, because of course, this is a social justice project, and therefore the vulnerable are very important to ensuring. And therefore, understanding the work of the vulnerable and putting them at the heart helps you in your analysis to be able to achieve sustainable change. Identify other collaborators and work with them. And work with the magic moments. That is what we found. Prioritize magic moments. Be opportunistic. That is the word. Use the opportunities that come your way to your advantage. And these are the working principles and the core practices that I believe we would learn. Now, this is the final slide, which is looking at a table that I've put together that puts everything that we have discussed together. And I'll start from the bottom, which is assumptions. Assumptions is that you have done your political economy analysis, or you have the tools that do that. This include the PES, political, economic, social, and technological analysis. There are several tools that you can find online to do that. Gender equality and social inclusion has to be core for you. You have to have a dynamic team that understands the work. The next block is the working principles, which we have just discussed. Flexibility, collaboration, trust, inclusion, and opportunity. The working principles. On the other side are the core practices. The Agile Manifesto, use of short planning cycles, telling stories, learning, and sharing. The statement of interdependence is in the middle because it holds everything together. And when you do this very well, you're able to achieve the purpose, which is the project objective, to increase the effectiveness of citizens, which was my project objective. And when you're able to achieve your purpose, then the goal is much easier to get to. Now, I want to end with a quote. After 5 years of implementing this, we had an external evaluation come and look at it. And this is what the person said. And with your permission, I would read. The use of the convening, catalyzing, coordination, and learning approach as a method of work has been key to achieving the outcomes harvested, as they were carefully and deliberately deployed. In practice, the precise hierarchy and mix of application dependent on the moment, the context, and the specific purpose it was intended to serve. The 3Cs and L approach was relevant in maintaining program focus while responding to the differential needs and capacities of grantees. This is what the donor said about us at the end of the 5 years. Thank you very much for staying with me. If you want more information about this project, please write to me on my email that is on the screen. Send me a message on LinkedIn. My name is Teiko Sabah. Thank you so much for standing by. Thank you so much for listening in. I'm happy to have joined you to share my experience with you. Thank you and have a good day.